Okay, let this sink in for a second. Today started with the outgoing president, Joe Biden, who's still president at the time, obviously, preemptively pardoning the people who investigated the January 6th attack on the Capitol and the officers who defended the Capitol that day. Now, just a few hours later, the person who incited that attack took the oath of office for the second time in the very same building, the Capitol, where the attack took place. And just moments ago, literally in the last 15 minutes, in the Oval Office, which is a choice, Trump issued pardons for approximately 1,500 people convicted of crimes related to that attack and commuted the sentences of 6 others as well. And we're going to spend a lot of time talking about that through the course of this evening with a lot of people who know a lot about it. But I want to catch you up just in case you're just tuning into what happened today, because it was not exactly a normal inauguration day in any way. Senator Adam Schiff, who played a key role in investigating the insurrection and who was therefore the recipient of one of those pardons I mentioned from President Biden, is going to join me in just a moment. He was also at the Capitol today, where he watched the man who has threatened him repeatedly be sworn in as president once again. And amid some of those truly mind-bending dynamics I've just gone through, there were moments today that bizarrely seemed kind of normal on the surface, and that was by design. President Joe Biden and Dr. Jill Biden greeting the Trumps before hosting them for tea. That must have been quite a tea. Biden and Trump also rode over from the White House to the Capitol as outgoing and incoming presidents have for generations. That was between all of these pardons. But some of the visuals were also very different than what we are used to, through Democrats and Republicans who have been inaugurated. For one, the inauguration was held inside, and that meant the audience was much smaller and far more exclusive. I mean, the room was filled with a very strange intermingling of incoming cabinet nominees and family members and, billionaire tech CEOs. You can see Mark Zuckerberg there. You can see the President Tim Cook of Apple there, all standing right behind Trump, all together in a happy little jolly band. It also meant that most of the 200,000 people who had tickets to the inauguration were left lining up to get into the Capital One Arena in downtown D.C. to watch the proceedings on a jumbotron. It also meant there wasn't the typical inaugural parade, when past presidents like Jimmy Carter took the opportunity to walk the full route, see people who voted for him, who were there out supporting him, or when Barack Obama, in about the temperature in the 20s with a high wind chill, hopped out to greet thousands of supporters on Pennsylvania Avenue on the route. Today, there was none of that. In other words, it wasn't really an inauguration for the people who had sent Trump to office again. Instead, it was in many ways an inauguration for the powerful, including Trump himself. And that was also true for the speech itself. I mean, typically the inaugural address, again, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, is not really a political speech. Of course, it's a moment in politics. I mean, it's the result. You're being inaugurated because you won an election. But it's often a time where politics kind of suspends itself for a moment. It's a time where a president doesn't discuss themselves or their political victory or where they won or lost. Instead, they discuss the country, where it is, where it needs to go. Oftentimes, that means discussing a crisis. Their country always has some sort of crisis going on, and how the country can get through it together. 16 years ago for Barack Obama, that was the financial crisis. Just 4 years ago for Joe Biden, that was the COVID pandemic. But today for Donald Trump, his focus was very much on himself. I don't think it's an overstatement to say, for anybody who watched, this is not only perhaps the most politicized inaugural address in history, but also the most self-involved. I mean, he said in the speech he was tested and challenged more than any president. He said he was, quote, this is a quote, saved by God to make America great again. He said many people thought it was impossible for him to stage a historic political comeback, but here I am. There's a whole lot of me, myself, and I. Not a whole lot of us as a country. And remember, that was teleprompter Trump. That was scripted Donald Trump. Less than an hour after that inaugural address, in a second set of remarks at the Capitol today, we got an even clearer picture of what was really on his mind.
I did have a couple of things, to say that were extremely controversial. And between JD and Melania and anybody else that heard, please, sir, It's such a beautiful, unifying speech. Please, sir, don't say these things. I was going to talk about the J6 hostages, but you'll be happy because, you know, it's action, not words that count. I was going to talk about the things that Joe did today with the pardons of people that were very, very guilty of very bad crimes, like the Unselect Committee of Political Thugs. I was going to talk about that. They said, please don't bring that up right now. You can bring it up tomorrow.
I was going to talk about that, but they said, please don't bring it up. Just saying a little quiet part out loud there. He also did the same thing in Capital One Arena a little bit later. Now, I think it's important to take a little bit of a step back and talk about why he's still so fixated on this and why he pardoned the people who perpetrated that attack just in the last hour. What he's really signaling with these pardons is that if you commit a crime in my name, it's not really a crime. That's how he sees his own power. It's how he sees his new job as the president of the United States. We saw that basically throughout the day today. And we may continue to see it in the hours and days and months to come. I mean, one of the executive orders he just signed moments ago is one that will end birthright citizenship, which flies in the face of the Constitution and is explicitly protected under the 14th Amendment. Can't really just end birthright citizenship, but he's telling us that he thinks he should be able to. He told us what he thinks of his power in that speech. Definitely, God sent him here, saved him, apparently. He still also told us with the visuals of that inaugural ceremony. And he's telling us with these executive orders, too. He's telling the country that crimes committed on his behalf are not really crimes, that he knows better than the Constitution. But it's crucial to remember that just because he thinks that doesn't make it true. And the great tension moving forward for this country from this day one that we're still in through the next 4 years is going to be between how he sees power and what he can actually do. And it's incumbent upon all of us to talk about that. Joining me now is Democratic Senator Adam Schiff of California. He received a preemptive pardon from President Biden today. He also attended today's inauguration. There is so much I want to get to with you, Senator Schiff. I just have to start. I mean, in the last hour, Donald Trump was in the Oval Office, which I see as a choice, and just pardoned 1,500 people convicted for the attack on our Capitol. You did so much important work on the January 6th committee. You have never held back in talking about the impact of this on our country. What is going through your head right now?
It's obscene. It's a grotesque display of his new power as president to pardon these 1,500 or 1,600 people, which I have to imagine includes people that committed violent assaults on law enforcement. It certainly includes, apparently, one of the leaders of the Proud Boys. Rather fitting, sadly, that among his very first acts in office is to give a pardon to a white nationalist leader like that. So hard to imagine that we were sitting in the Capitol, the site of that attack, and hours later, the man who incited that attack pardons the people who participated in that attack. It really is a terrible way to begin, but not a surprising way to begin the new administration.